Xander Zayas looked impressive last night in his win against Jorge Garcia, making Zayas now the WBO champion and belt holder at 154 pounds. It was a fun fight. Both guys were just throwing haymakers. Both guys tested the other guy's chin. Their own chin was tested, and overall a good win for Zayas, who won that pretty comfortably via a unanimous decision, as he becomes a belt holder at 22, the youngest belt holder in boxing. It's just crazy to think. I know they talked about the story, him signing the top rank at 16, now holding the WBO title at 22. Hey, I'm 22. I couldn't imagine doing that, so props to Xander Zayas. But now the question is, he's a belt holder. Can he compete, and is he ready for the other top dogs in the sport? Not only in the sport, but in the division, because we know 154 is maybe the division with the most depth in it in boxing. It's incredible. Not only are the belt holders top tier, the guys who don't even have belts are just as elite as them. So is Zayas now being among the champions, the 4 champions at 154, is he ready for that entire field? This is the Never Drop Podcast. Make sure you like the video, comment below what you thought about Zayas' performance last night, and make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'm now taking a look at the whole 154-pound division title, championship, outlook, whatever you want to call it. As now, of course, Zayas with the WBO. You got Sebastian Fundora with the WBC, Bakram Murtalovich, apologize if I mispronounce the last name, with the IBF, and then Terrence Crawford technically still has the WBA. Obviously, he's going to 68, probably going to vacate, give up the belt, or whatever. The interim champion at WBA is Yoenis Tellez, and then Virgil Ortiz is the WBC interim champion. Now the question is for Zayas. Is he ready for these guys? You can take Crawford out of the picture because I don't see him coming back to 154. I don't think that's going to be the case. We almost saw a fight between Zayas and Fundora. In the build-up to this fight, they were talking to Xander about whether or not that fight was a possibility. He said yes. He said he agreed to everything. And then last second, Fundora's team came back with, okay, there's going to be a rehydration clause, which Xander Zayas said, no, I don't want to do that. And then they sort of went ghost, and then 2 weeks later, it was announced they're doing a Tim Tszyu rematch. And then, of course, Fundora, he had both the WBC and the WBO, but had to drop the WBO if he wasn't facing a mandatory. Then that's how Zayas and Garcia ended up fighting for the WBO last night. So Zayas is saying, I was already ready. Like, he didn't have to give up the belt. I was going to go take the belts away from him. But he was rather going to take that Tszyu rematch instead of facing me. He's like, I agreed to everything. This is Zayas talking, money-wise, venue, everything. And then the rehydration, that was just too much for me, which is an interesting thing whether or not the Fundora team put that on last second. We haven't heard anything from Sebastian Fundora's team whether or not that was true or not, so we'll have to wait and see to confirm that story. But either way, we'll see. Is that still an interesting fight? I'd love to see Fundora versus Zayas, but I don't know if Zayas necessarily is ready for these top guys at 54. And that's no discredit to Zayas. He's gotten here. He's 22. He's a champion. I just don't think he's at that level yet of the other champions at 54. Because, again, I talked about it being a deep division. It's a very skilled division as well. It was funny. I was listening to Sean Zettel the other day on Morning Combat with Brian Campbell. I want to give Sean credit for this. He said, I kind of break everybody into 3 tiers of champions, right? You have your champion, champion in name, not an average, obviously above average fighter, but nothing too crazy. And you have your quality champion, and then you have your pound for pound guys. And again, shout out to Sean Zettel for this ranking, because I think this makes total sense. He said he's moved up Fundora to quality, right? At first, he was just a champion at 154, and then he's moved up to a quality champion. I think that's a perfect way to put it, because right now I think Zayas at 22, he's just a champion. There's some things that he does very well in his game, but there's also some holes, right? He can get hit with shots. We saw Garcia. Granted, Garcia's an awkward fighter, second to none when it comes to awkwardness, and no fighter, no champion at 54 that Zayas would face would be as awkward as Garcia was on Saturday. But there's times, and they mentioned this in the broadcast, he can get hit with shots, Xander Zayas. He can get hit with a looping left hook. He can leave one of his hands down, get hit with a shot. Granted, we did see Zayas. He held his chin. There was some shots that buzzed him, but again, these guys were throwing fire at each other. It's boxing. You're going to get hit. I just think against the top-level guys at 54, that might accumulate over 12 rounds, and that might not be in favor of Zayas. You look at Sebastian Fundora, especially what he did to Tim Tszyu. He just kept coming forward, just keeping the pressure and just throwing relentless amount of punches. And eventually he stopped Tim Tszyu. That could potentially happen to Xander Zayas. I think Sebastian Fundora has raised his stock tremendously within the last, 12 months. I think he's a force to be reckoned with at 154. A lot of people actually saying he could be an undisputed champion at 54. I think there's a lot of guys at 54 that could get in the way of that, but that's a possibility. I think another guy that would be a heck of a fight for Zayas, and he's really a heck of a fight for anybody if they take the fight at 54, is Virgil Ortiz. I'm a huge Virgil Ortiz fan, and against Zayas, it's nonstop pressure. We saw against Madrimov, originally was going to box, and then he was like, okay, let me just pressure. And is one of his power shots going to get to Xander Zayas? I don't know. This is, again, not to discredit anything Xander Zayas has done. I think just at 22, he has a lot more to grow into his game. He's an extremely young fighter who's going to be on the scene for a while, but I think if he gets thrown into the deep end with these champions and these top-tier guys at 54, it might be a little too early. I think you get to 23, 24 years old for Xander Zayas, he still has a belt. Okay, I give him more of a shot against these top-tier guys. I just think he's a little young and green at the moment, and there's holes in his game that at 22 years old, of course there are. A lot of these 22-year-olds are still prospects. This guy's a full belt holder at 54, one of the best divisions in the sport of boxing. I hope Top Rank doesn't rush him. Of course, Zayas, the competitor in him, he's wanting those title fights. He wants a Fundora fight, which I think would be a heck of a fight. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's a complete mismatch. No, it's a good fight. It's probably a 60-40, 65-35 fight in favor of Fundora. No doubt about it, these guys would be the favorites against Xander Zayas, but it would be a competitive fight. I think if you just want to wait to be 50-50, give Xander Zayas a few more fights at 54. Obviously, he's been at 54 for a while. He doesn't need a few more fights, but let him continue to train and build up his game, correct the holes in his game. And this guy could be a 50-50 fight against a lot of people. You got to give him props because, again, 22 with a belt, he's one heck of, I want to say a prospect or a contender, but no, he's a champion. Now, props to Xander Zayas, but 54 is a division. Hey, you got Boots Ennis coming in. He hasn't fought at 54 yet, but we know what he's done at 47. You got a lot of these guys at 54 who are killers. And for Xander Zayas, he's one of those guys. Don't get me wrong, again. But I think against these top-level guys, Xander Zayas, you give him 2 more years, it's going to be a 50-50 fight. Again, props to Xander Zayas. He put on a clinic on Saturday at the theater at MSG. Looked like a great showing. He's bringing people out. Top Rank has built him up well, right? And that's another thing with Top Rank. They're going to have to work with these different promoters, and Top Rank now without a platform as their deal with ESPN has concluded, right? He'd have to go and be the B-side to a lot of these guys because if he's fighting Sebastian Fundora, he's fighting on PBC on Prime, right? So it's like if he's fighting Virgil Ortiz, well, granted, he has a belt. Virgil's the interim champ, but that fight would have to be on DAZN for Golden Boy, right? So losing a little bit of leverage, but he's going to be out, so hopefully Top Rank announces something soon. But either way, props to Xander Zayas. I think he's close to being ready for the big dogs at 54. Even though he's now one of the big dogs with that name and the belt around his waist, I want to see him in 2 more fights, another year and a half, and I think we're going to get some of the best Xander Zayas that we've seen. Props to him for winning a championship. I'm excited to see, even if he goes straight into these tough fights, I'm excited to see those fights against the other champions. Props to Xander Zayas. Let me know in the comments below if you think he's ready for these other guys like Fundora, like Virgil Ortiz, right? Like a Boots Ennis, like any of these guys at 54 I've talked about. Let me know if you think Xander Zayas is ready for him. Comment below whether or not. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to Never Drop Podcast. That's all I got for you today. Peace. I'm out.